Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping straight into a topic that sits at this really fascinating intersection of government power, massive financial incentives, and corporate sustainability. We're talking about the biofuels industry. But we aren't just looking at the crops and the chemistry today. We're actually digging into the accounting standards that govern how these companies report the billions of dollars they get in government subsidies and how that money directly influences their boardroom lobbying. It's really a two-sided coin, and understanding how it works is absolutely critical if you want to evaluate the true value and risk profile of these companies.
So here is our agenda for today. First, the biofuels regulatory environment. Second, tracking global government subsidies. Third, disclosing corporate policy positions. And finally, number 4, managing long-term enterprise risks. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The biofuels regulatory environment.
We're analyzing this industry right through the authoritative lens of the SASB standards. These standards, which are under the stewardship of the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB, are exactly what investors and financial analysts rely on to assess long-term enterprise value. Basically, they dictate exactly what sustainability-related financial info companies have to disclose. And for biofuels, well, the legal and regulatory environment is hands down one of the most critical disclosure topics across the board.
The absolute crucial point here is what we'll call biofuels regulatory dependency. You see, biofuels don't just organically exist in some pure, unassisted free market. As the source material explicitly points out, the industry's entire foundation is heavily dependent on government policies and regulations. These rules literally create the market demand, and they incentivize the supply through tax breaks and feedstock support. Just to put that into perspective, we're talking about an industry where global subsidies regularly run into the tens of billions of dollars every single year. Without this framework, the economic reality of biofuels would look entirely different.
So, zooming in on the management of the legal and regulatory environment category, our focus today really rests on two specific metric codes: RRBI 538.1 and RRBI 538.2. These two codes essentially form the specific mechanics of our two-sided coin.
Moving on to Section 2, Tracking Global Government Subsidies.
Let's crack open metric RBI 538.1. This code mandates that companies have to transparently disclose the exact amount of subsidies they pull in from government programs during the reporting year. It sounds like a pretty straightforward requirement, but it fundamentally shifts how we view a company's revenue stream, because it forces them to isolate the cash that comes directly from government intervention.
We hear the broad word subsidy thrown around all the time, but companies are actually having to aggregate a really diverse mix of financial instruments. It creates this fascinating split reality. Picture this. On one side, you have a financial chart displaying direct payments, blending tax credits and R&D capital grants. Then the screen splits, and you're looking at a boardroom presentation discussing policy stances on environmental and social regulations. It perfectly shows just how deeply blended corporate finance and public money truly are in this sector.
And we have to remember, it isn't just local support. These are massive companies operating internationally, which means they must account for a vast global network of financial support across all jurisdictional levels. They have to track everything, from surcharges placed on competing products all the way to international capital grants and import tariffs. Basically, if a government program anywhere in the world provided monetary support, it has got to be recorded.
So how in the world do you logically report this massive global web of grants, loans, and tax credits? Well, the standard demands simplicity for the end user. It must be reported as a single aggregated amount in the company's presentation currency. And honestly, here's the most fascinating part. This single aggregated number is required regardless of whatever complex behind-the-scenes accounting methods a company might use internally to defer or spread out those tax credits. It ensures everyone looking at the books gets a clear bottom-line number of total government support.
That brings us to Section 3, Disclosing Corporate Policy Positions. Okay, let's flip the coin. Enter metric RR-BI-530A.2. Under this standard, companies have to pull back the corporate curtain. They must discuss their exact policy positions related to government regulations and rulemaking that address environmental and social factors. It demands an open, public discussion of their efforts to manage the risks and the opportunities surrounding the very policies that keep their industry afloat. We're looking at a pretty stark contrast here. On one side, companies face severe regulatory risks. Think increased compliance costs, reputation damage, and the existential threat of policy reversal leading to a complete loss of those financial incentives we were just talking about. But on the flip side,
There are massive regulatory opportunities. If their lobbying efforts successfully align government policy with their long-term strategic goals, it leads to vastly improved financial conditions and even better community relations.
Finally, Section 4, Managing Long-Term Enterprise Risks.
This naturally leads us to a much deeper question. How do companies synthesize all of this to protect their long-term enterprise value? Well, they're actually required to disclose their overall plans through 3 specific strategic steps. Step 1, are they making changes to their business structure or model? Step 2, are they investing in the development of new technologies or services? And Step 3, are they making changes to their operational processes, controls, or organizational structures? They have to explicitly tie their regulatory lobbying and risk management directly to concrete business actions.
The standard itself impartially notes the potential long-term adverse environmental impacts from feedstock and biofuels production may result in a reversal of beneficial policies leading to a more uncertain regulatory environment. In other words, if the industry doesn't manage its environmental impacts and societal trade-offs, well, the government might just pull the plug on the subsidies entirely. That money tap can be turned off just as easily as it was turned on if the societal trade-offs become too steep.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Can an industry that is entirely dependent on shifting government policies and massive subsidies ever be truly valued without absolute transparency into its corporate lobbying? The SASB framework strongly suggests you absolutely need both. You need both sides of the coin, the financial intake and the strategic output, to actually see the whole picture of enterprise value. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. And keep exploring these incredible frameworks that are shaping our global markets. Catch you next time.